Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to this week's video. This week we're going to look at sort of character customization or sort of like character configurator. I've got two sort of, it's the same system, but I've got two sort of styles how you can view it. So the first one here is almost like a character selection screen. It's just a static fixed camera, and as you flick through the different options, your character then updates with all the different bits and pieces, and you can go through and select all of these. There's that way, and then the other way is more of like a live in-game version, which is like this. So you got a character, you can run around, you can play and do whatever. But if you hit Q, just for example, we can change the sort of character's chest model on the fly like that. Press Q again, and we can run away. So if we hit Q, we can't actually control the character anymore, but we can change the skin. And then hit Q, and then we're back in the game then, as is. So this is the model this is the way we're going to look at it today. But you can adapt it to work however you want, whether you want sort of like a character creator or customization on the fly. So with all that being said, let's crack on. Let's get into it, and yeah. Okay, so to get started, if you want to follow along with myself, I've just opened up a third-person template. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the stylized character kit from the Unreal Marketplace. This was released by Epic Games. It should still be free, and it's a great little pack because it contains multiple characters. Well, the single character, but with multiple parts. You've got different t-shirts, shirts, different facial features, and some other stuff like that. So to get started, let's add that to the project. I've already added it, so it's just overwritten the files there. So you can see here, you should now see the SCK folder. And we can open that up, go to the blueprints, and we're going to open up the third person character. Now, because this was released for both UE4 and UE5, unfortunately there are a few things we need to change. You should see a couple of warnings if you compile it. And this is essentially where the input settings are still mapped for the Unreal 4. It's really quick and easy fix. Essentially, you just need to match up the new lookup for the mouse. So we'll do look up, and you should see at the top an axis event of look up and down mouse. So we'll plug that in. We'll get that plugged in, and then the same for the rest of them really. So we've got turn. So we'll do input turn. And you can see here we've got turn left and right mouse. We'll get that, but we can do import turn and get the gamepad as well, because that's going to go up there. And we can do look up gamepad as well and get that into that one. So I'll just quickly, I'm just going to get rid of these axis, plug that in, get rid of that, plug that in, connect that, and then there's just one more to do after that, and that's going to be for the keyboard buttons, which is going to be move forward. Now there is this VR orientation reset. I'm not going to have VR, so I'm going to delete that. So this is move forward. So that's now move forward backwards. Get that connected in like that, and then move right, move right and left, and again get that connected up. So once you've done that, if you press compile, all them problems should go away. And actually, if we go back to the map, and at the top here, in between the three icons, you've got this list of blueprints. Go down to where it says project settings, edit the game mode, go to pawn, and select a pawn class, and you want third person character. The default that comes with this project is BP, but the one that's inside the stylized character is just a third person, so select that. If you now press play, you'll see that you've got the old UE4 character, and that he looks like he's got a dislocated shoulder. And that's just because the skeleton's slightly modified to fit this stylized character, but that shouldn't affect much. If you follow with this pack, it shouldn't affect anything. So we've got that character now set up. We just need to change a few things. So what we can do is we'll select the mesh to start with actually. Now this is just, we're going to be disabling this complete mesh because we're actually going to switch it out for individual components. More on that in just a little bit. But just to start, I want to select the skeletal mesh as a backup. I'm just going to find the fully naked dude, and that's going to be a backup. But what we are going to do, we're going to select the mesh, and we're going to scroll down to where it says rendering is here, and we're just going to untick visibility. Now I'm only doing that because, like I said, we're going to be setting up parts, and each part's going to be visible, and we don't want two meshes overlapping. You'll see what I mean, well, just now actually. So select your mesh and add a skeletal mesh and call this head. Add another, and we'll call this chest. And actually what I need to do is I need to make chest a child of the original mesh and not the head. Select the mesh again, add, and we're going to have legs. Select the mesh one more time, add, and we're going to have hands. And to be honest, I think that's the 4 that we need. So I'm going to select the head, scroll up, and on the right I'm just going to select just the head mesh, which is mesh HA1. Select that. And also we need to select an animation blueprint. Now, although that this is just a head, it still maintains the full skeleton of the full body, and the animation just works on the head bone. So what you'll see is if you select where it says animation class none and select third person anim BP, the head now moves around as if there was a full body moving. And we just need to repeat this process. So we'll go to chest, we'll select a mesh. Now for me, I'm just going to go for the naked top, and then I'm going to select animation class and select third person, and now you can see that they animate together. And then following the same process, we're going to go to the legs, add some legs, add the animation blueprint, and then again for the hands, we'll scroll down and the hands are here. The hands are pretty difficult to see in the preview, but it's mesh underscore P, and you see the hands are there, and then we'll do the animation, and now you can see we've got a full body. And this isn't actually the full mesh, it's just all the parts added together. So if we scroll back down now to rendering and make this visible, you'll see there's not much of a difference, but when you start to add clothes onto this person, the two meshes will start to overlap subtly, and you'll see that. So just keep this one invisible, and if you want to stick to only full meshes, you can follow along with the same video, except instead of changing individual components, or in just having a top or just having him in pants, you would only be limited to the full meshes. So that's him fully dressed. Hang on, let's get back to view, visible. So you'd only be able to have him fully dressed, and you can see what I mean there, where the two chests are overlapping and they're meshing with each other. But I don't want that, so I'm just going to go back up. So you could flick between the full body meshes where he's already dressed, if that's what you want to do. So that's not as much customizable, but it's still somewhat customizable. Anyway, enough on that. So we've got the parts, and as you can see, if you press play now, you won't be able to really tell a difference. You can't see any sort of seams between the hands and or the head or the legs. It just all goes together quite nicely. So what we need to do now is I'm just going to show you how to modify just the chest, but it's exactly the same process for the hands, the head, and the legs. It's just the video will get a lot longer if I just repeat the same steps. But if we just flick over to the event graph, and what I'm going to do actually is I want to separate my customization onto a different board, just to make it a bit neater. So where it says graphs, I'm just going to press plus, and I'm just going to put this customizer, something like that. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a new variable. I'm going to put this as chest options, just like that, and I'm going to select the type as skeletal mesh, which is this one. It's not the actual skeleton picture, it's just like the box, and then we want object reference. Now the only difference is if you right click on the type, you'll change it to an array, which will be signified by these dots. that just means that you can get multiple chess pieces in there. So if we hit compile now, with this selected on the right, you'll see under default value, chest options is now an array that we can modify. I'm just going to add 3 of them. So I'm going to have 3 chest options. So my first one's going to be the naked top. The second one's going to be him in a t-shirt. And then the third one is going to be his jacket. So I've now got 3 options. So I want to get the length of this array, which basically just tells me how many different items have I got in this array. That's going to return back with 3. I did 4 then, but yeah, you're going to get 3. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to type in length, and this is going to return the 3 options that we have. Now, the only downside with the number 3 is if we return number 3 as can you pick number 3 out of there, there won't be one. So what we're actually going to need to do is we're going to need to minus 1 from this. So our length is only 2. But when we go to pick a chess part, it's going to start from 0. So we're going to have 0, 1 and 2, which is our 3 pieces. So that's fine. And then what we can do is we can drag off this dot and promote this to a variable. And I'm going to call this one max. I'm going to call this chest options length, just to keep it nice and descriptive. And then I'm going to wire this to an event begin play. Now, just a word of warning, obviously I've set up 2 different graphs here. If you've already got event begin play in your project, this will not really work. It'll probably open your event graph and find it for you. So you'll just have to find a different way to start that off. Or you don't have to separate your graph at all. You could get it in here and sort of you could collapse the nodes or something like that to like a box like that, and it still keeps it discrete, but given the option, I like setting up a new graph. Yeah, so here we've got a variable now that stores how many chess pieces we can pick from, and we've stored that. So the other thing that we could do now is let's pre-make the blueprint for setting the mesh. So we will do a custom event, and this is going to be change chest. Now, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set a skeletal mesh. Now, because we are doing the chest, in this instance, I'm going to select the chest option, and that pre-enters the target. So for us, that is chest. Now, we're going to need a new mesh. So it's going to be one of our chest options. And to sort of get which chest we want, we're going to get a copy. Now, this copy requires a number. So that's basically, do you want chest number 0, number 1, or number 2? And that's where our length comes in handy. Now, we need something to sort of flick through this, which is going to be our UI. If we press next, it's going to go from 0 to 1 to then 1 to 2, and it's going to filter through it. But this output is ultimately going to be our new mesh. Now, our UI is going to go through the different options, but when we call this event, it'd be good if we could pass in the choice that we've stopped on and pass it into here. Now, to do that, if we add an input and we just say chest, either selection or the chest option that's been picked, chest selection is good for me, and I'm going to change that to an integer. So now what we can do is we can plug this into here, and we just need to make sure when we call this change chest that we actually give it a number that represents that. So we'll hit compile, and I think from this point of view we're okay. So let's make our UI so then we can actually make this change happen. So I'm going to go back to my map, and I'm just going to go back to my content folder. I'm going to create a new folder called UI. Within this folder, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go user interface and widget blueprint. I'm going to select user widget, and for me, I'm going to call this one customize _ tools. I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to keep this very, very basic. I don't want to go too much into this. So for me, I'm just going to get a canvas panel just so I can move things around quite easily. and then I'm going to have a horizontal box. Just drag that in. And so the good thing about a horizontal box on a canvas is you can just drag it around and put it wherever you want. What I'll probably do is anchor it to the top right, and then I'll make some adjustments in just a minute. So with my horizontal box, I'm going to need a button. Add a button. I'm going to put a text inside that button. I'm going to put a text in between them, so I'm going to drop that on my horizontal box. I'm then going to grab another button and then another text inside that button. So the first button for me is going to be previous chest, and I'm just going to change the text block now to just an abbreviation for previous, prev. My text block in the middle is going to be chest, and then my button on the right is going to be next chest, and then again change the text block to next. And now we just need to work on the size and spacing. So I'm going to select, I'm actually going to minimize these buttons now because I'm not going to change the text again. I'm going to select the previous button and I'm going to do fill and then left aligned. I'm going to do the chest text. I'm going to center align it, vertically align it, and then fill. And I'm also going to do chest next, and I'm going to do fill and right. And that now looks absolutely terrible. So bear with me a sec. What have we got? So I don't really want to do fit to content. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set the width to 400, and I'm going to set the y-axis or the height to 50. And I think that's a nice-ish looking box. And then I'm just going to drag the whole thing up here. I'm probably going to keep it. Obviously, if you've got plenty of options, you can have them spaced on your screen. I'm probably going to have mine about center, to be honest. Which, in that case, I'm probably just going to tag it here and then move it over. What have we got? Minus 500, maybe. So that's about right for me. So I'm going to hit compile, and that looks okay. So what have we got now? So obviously we've got our buttons. Now when we press them, we want it to do something. So I'm going to go over to the graph. I'm actually going to remove all of them functions just because I don't like them cluttering up the screen. I'm going to press the next chest. I'm going to select on pressed, and I'm also going to do previous chest and also on pressed. So really we need to find out what options we've got to cycle through first. So we'll do an event construct. Now essentially that's just like a begin play node, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a quick delay. Now the reason I'm doing that is because if the HUD is drawn before my character, this variable may not have been set. So by adding a delay, what we're essentially doing is just allowing other things to be built first, and then this would be coming a split second later. 0.2 seconds at that stage is actually quite a long time, so that's fine. The reason I'm saying that is because I've had it in the past where I've played the game, and the next thing that we're going to do is get a reference to that variable, and it says that it doesn't exist, and this typically solves that issue. So what we'll do now is what I'm actually going to do, I'm just going to slow down a little bit, and I'm just going to add one more thing to this to make it a little bit nicer. I'm going to go back to the third person map. I'm going to go back to my content, go to third person blueprint, and I'm just going to create myself a player controller, because the default one in this template doesn't allow you to edit it, but I'm going to want to. So I'm going to do blueprint class. I'm going to select player controller, and I'm just going to quickly do BP underscore player controller. I'm going to go into that, and I'm just going to set up my heads-up display. So on event begin play, we're going to create a widget. This widget is going to be our customized tools. I'm going to make a variable of this HUD, and then I'm going to add that to my viewport. Add to viewport. That is fine. But what I'm also going to do... Okay, I'm actually going to leave that there. Because we're going to come back to this, but I don't think we're ready to do that just yet. But just adding this to the screen for now will be enough, just so we can get sort of an idea of what it looks like on the screen. But before we can do that, we just need to go back to the map and just edit our game mode. So again, at the top of the screen, in the middle, we'll select Blueprints, go to Project Settings and Game Mode, and we just need to change that player controller now to our new one, which is BP_player controller. And then because we're actually adding this widget to the screen now, if we press play, we can see what our HUD is going to look like. So you can test it just quickly. Now I'm actually in the game as well. My mouse doesn't let me click on it. So I have no way of getting to that menu. So what we can do is we can change how our game takes our inputs. So what I'm going to do, just provisionally, I'm just going to use the Q key on my keyboard. And when this is pressed, what I want to do is I want to set the UI mode to, let's say, game and UI. And then the player controller is reference to self. And if you wanted to, you could focus on this widget, but I don't think that's necessary. And then what we also need to do is we also need to say, let's show the cursor, and let's tick that. Now, obviously, when we press Q, this is going to appear. What I'm going to set up is when I press that again, it gets rid of the customization. So for me to do that, I'm going to add a flip-flop, which basically says when I press this twice, I'm going to go A, and then I'm going to go B, and then I'm going to go A, then I'm going to go B. So the alternative to that is then game. Would it be game only? I think actually. I'm just going to set the cursor to not visible, because I don't necessarily think I should just set the UI to be not visible. So if by default we have this whole customized tools as hidden, and then when we press this key, we change the UI mode, which should be set like that anyway, but then we have the HUD visibility to visible, and essentially we just want to, oh, that's the wrong button. We just want to copy all of this, and when we press it again, we just want to set the mouse cursor to not be visible, and then the visibility to hidden. And I think that should be enough, to be honest. So if we press play and click in the game, I hit Q, I can now change this, and then if I hit Q again, my mouse disappears, and that's that. Now, actually what I've just noticed is I couldn't move my camera, so maybe I was wrong about that, and I actually have to specify that we want game only. Let's set it to game only, and that'll be self. Let's connect those up. Quick test. Press Q, click, and then okay. So that's fine. So what have we got there? We've got Q press, flip flop. We've got enter game mode and UI. show the cursor and set the customize tools to visible. And then when we press that again, we then set the input mode back to game only, hide the cursor, and make the widget invisible. So that bit's all pretty good. And what I'm actually going to do is, I'm thinking when we press Q, we don't want the character to be able to continue running around, so we might want to just disable movement for sort of like a split second. So let's do Q key on here, and what we'll do is, let's say stop movement. So stop active movement when you press it. And does that prevent me from doing it? No. So do we have disable input? I don't know if I want to disable input, to be honest. Let's have a look. So if we disable input, hit Q, so that's not actually doing anything. Oh, sorry, this might be my fault actually. So let me just disconnect that. Nope, don't do that. Let's disconnect that. I actually think that this just isn't working because in our player controller, our Q key here actually consumes the input. So our Q key is never actually being pressed in your third person character. So just in your player controller, if you deselect consume input, essentially that allows the Q to be pressed here and here. So now I don't know whether I should turn consume input off here. I'm going to do it. So we should stop now. Hit Q. We don't. That is weird. So let's add that disable movement. See if that makes a difference. So there we go. So that's been disabled. We'll hit Q again, and now we can't move. So let's put this in line. Tell you what, we could get rid of that one. Put these in line. So we're going to keep that. But this is going to be a flip-flop again. And the alternate state for this would be to set movement mode. Get rid of that. Back to walking. So I think this is the correct way to do it. So hit Q, we stop walking, we can change the chest, hit Q again, and we're back into walking mode. So that's all the movement sorted. So literally all we need to do now is link up the HUD to switch them out. So I'll go back to graph. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to get player character. We will cast to third person. As the third person, we are going to get, is it max chest? I forgot what it is already now. So was that chest option lengths? Get chest option length. And what I'll do is I'm going to promote this to a variable here, just to make it a bit easier to use. And I think that's all I'll need for now, except what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new variable and I'm going to put chest selection. Change this to an integer. Hit compile. I'm going to drag this out. So I need my chest selection and I also need the length to know what my maximum choice should be. What we want to do is we want to say if the chest selection is less than the maximum length, because essentially this will be set to 2. So as long as this selection is 0 or 1, sorry, less than 2, we should be able to increase it. So we'll do a branch. If this is true when we press next, let's take that selection and increment it by 1. So that's if it's true. These lines are going to go everywhere, so I do apologise at how messy this is going to look in just a second. So let's just get ahead of ourselves. So if that's true, if not, if this is not less than the length, that means it already is 2, which means we want to reset it to 0. So the false would be to set the selection to 0. Yep. So then we just need to do the opposite of that for the previous button. So what we could do is we could copy this and just change a few bits and pieces. So if the chest selection is actually, instead of this, it's just going to be if it's less than 0. No, sorry, if it's less than 1, that means it's 0. And then instead of adding, we're going to minus. So minus if it's false. If false, minus if it's true, then we want to set this selection to the length, like that, which would be 2. So if I've worked this out right, if you press previous and the selection is already less than 1, which means it's already 0, if that's true, then we want the chest selection to revert back to the maximum, which would be 2. If not, we can safely minus it, and then the opposite of that is if it's less than 2, we can add to it. If not, reset it to 0. So the only other thing that we need to do now is let's actually just get a reference to our character, so we can actually promote our character here to a variable. Oops, plug this in. Because then what we can do is down here, as third person character, we can get this change chest, and all of these are now options for that, because any of these can change that, and the option would be our chest selection. So let's drag that over, chest selection, and actually let's put both of these down here like that. So that should in theory work. So let's give it a test. So we can run around with our character, hit Q, we can now flick through the different chests, and oh, that looks a bit unusual. So I think I know what's happening there. When we're changing the chest, we're actually, yeah, that's it. So essentially this tick button here basically says when you change the mesh, just reinitialize the animation. So start back from frame 0. We don't want to do that. We want the animation to carry on from where it was on the last mesh. So untick that, hit compile, and then this should look a bit more natural. So we run around, we hit Q, we hit previous, and now we're getting that mesh changing. And luckily that's working in order. And then if you want a jacket or a t-shirt, oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. If you want a jacket or a t-shirt, you have that, press Q, and then you're back in the game then, but with a jacket on. So really all you need to do is repeat this change chest process and this length process with more tools on your HUD for each part that you need to customize, and then you should be good to go. Now I do have one other example of this that I did set up, which I was meant to show you at the beginning but I forgot about it, where I've just done the exact same thing but with a different set of characters. Let's hit play. Now what I've done is I've gone ahead and set up a fixed camera in this project, and essentially this is acting like a character selection screen. So you may have this set up in a level where you get to pick your character, You can save them settings in a data file maybe, and then that's your character then from that point on. So you'll hit play, you'll be in your game, you'll be selecting new character, then you'll be in this screen. You can then go through and change what hairstyle you want, what face you want, which doesn't seem to have worked anymore, but you can go through and change these options, and you'll get the customized character that you want. And these are all set up in exactly the same premise. You've got all your buttons there, and it just goes through the same thing. So it looks like I didn't save it, and it's only saved where I've done the hair. But that being said, that's pretty much it. So I hope that was useful. If it was, please consider giving me a like. Please put up a comment down below telling me what you thought of it. If it helped, that's all appreciated. If it did help and you want to see more things like this, please consider subscribing. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If we can reach that, that'd be absolutely amazing. And I can't do it without you. Also, if you do want to get in touch with me a bit more regularly or a bit easier, you can join the Discord. The link will be down below. I think there's 20 plus of us now, almost. So if I can't help you, somebody else may be able to help you. But the community's there for everybody to be helped. And that's it really. So I appreciate you watching this far. Thank you, and I'll see you in next week's video. Thank you.